Okay, so week 3, Friday, you'll be taking the first rhetorical essay that we'll practice with in class. This does have a time limit of 90 minutes, which should be like so much time to be able to plan and organize your essay before you actually start writing things. So take your time, don't panic, don't stress. Think about all those good tone words we talked about. Think about the list of effective verbs. Maybe like glance over those before you start or something. Then check your email and you should have the code for rhetorical essay number 1 in there. If for some reason you did not receive an email with the code, please let me know so I can get that to you as soon as possible and you can have plenty of time to get that done. Okay, so that's all I have to say about that. Oh, actually, sorry, last thing. Make sure not to navigate away from the test page. So it's not, a lockdown browser or anything. It won't prevent you from navigating to other pages. But if you do navigate to other pages, then I will be able to see it in the error log. And it obviously is kind of a cheating plagiarism red flag. So if you navigate away from the page for some innocuous reason, maybe let me know that. Otherwise, you may receive an email from me like, hey, at so-and-so time, you weren't on the test page and that looks sketchy. So just please don't do that so we don't have to have awkward conversation about it. Thanks. Okay. Other things. Looking ahead to next week, we have this nice 3-day weekend here. So what I wanted to do is set up a discussion for next week, which A-Day students will be doing virtually. And sorry. Reverse that. A-Day students will be doing in class and B-Day students will be doing virtually. Sorry, got my days mixed up. But it requires reading this lovely document. So Frederick Douglass was a pretty famous abolitionist from back in the day, and he gave a speech called "What to the Slave is the 4th of July." So I thought that was kind of an interesting extension of all the Declaration stuff from earlier this week. And what I did is I went ahead and gave you the space for the 4th of July. So I gave you speaker, purpose, audience, context, and exigence so that you already have that and you kind of know what you're looking for. And that hopefully that will make it easier to work through. But I would, of course, like you to read the speech and start thinking about some cats that you might be finding in there, choices, appeals, and tone. When we get to Tuesday, I will give virtual people and in-class people a specific set of paragraphs to focus on, and that focus will be what your post is on or what our class discussion is based on. But for now, 3-day weekend, your homework over the 3-day weekend is to read this. You may be thinking, why do we need 3 whole days to read this? Well, it's kind of on the long side. Yep. Yeah, it goes on for a bit. So space it out, don't have to read the whole thing at once. Maybe take it section by section. This website I really liked because they even had the sections kind of divided by, what their sort of central purpose was, an argumentative purpose. But yeah, it's a bit on the long side. It's longer than anything we've read so far. So I wanted to give you plenty of time to read and understand what exactly is going on there. So with that in mind, that's your charge for the weekend. This is your mission for today. Now I'm going to go back and talk about the Madeleine Albright student responses. So the first thing that I'm going to do is just go over the scores for all of the student responses, just like give you the numbers. If I give you the numbers and, every single one of your guesses was totally on point and you're feeling confident and you know what good things to have and what bad things to not have and you don't need to hear my explanations, then by all means, feel free to end video and start the rhetorical essay. But if some of your scores are or perhaps a bit off, you may want to listen to my explanation of the individual essay qualities that earned them points or did not earn them points. So let's go ahead and just open these up full screen so we can see. Okay, so sample A. Sample A received a score of 4. So they got 4 out of 6 points. They did not get the sophistication point, and they only got 3 out of 4 for evidence and commentary. So that was A. For sample B. Sample B was pretty rough, only got a 2 out of 6. They got their thesis point, it's a good one to have, but they only got 1 point on evidence and commentary, so 2 out of 6. Now, SAC. I hope I didn't give too much away by hinting that this one was absolute rubbish because, it was absolute rubbish. Sample C got 0 points. Nothing. Absolutely zilch. Nada. So, if you write sample C for your rhetorical essay, I will cry. Okay, sample D. Moving on to slightly happier things. Sample D managed a 3 out of 6. They got their thesis point, got 2 of their evidence points, but that's where it ended for them. So, unfortunately, lots of words, but didn't really take it anywhere. Sample E was another rough one. This one only got 1 point. It's one of the only times I've seen an essay get a point for evidence, but not get a thesis point. So they provided evidence of something, but God, they did not clarify what that something was. So 1 out of 6 points for sample E. Sample F. Sample F got a 6 out of 6. Congratulations, Sample F. They killed it, got all the points. The thesis was there, the evidence, beautiful and consistent, the sophistication, classy. It was good. Sample G, not as good. Only got a 3 out of 6 for sample G. Got the thesis point, got 2 of the evidence points, and stopped there. So you'll see that sample D and G, they both got the same score. D wrote a lot more, but just having the words there doesn't necessarily mean you get the points. Sample H. Sample H is another shining example of awesomeness. I wish I could write as good as Sample H. So Sample H got 6 out of 6 points. Just beautiful, beautiful writing, lovely organization. It was on point. Sample I, less on point. This one only got 3 out of 6 points. Once again, several essays got 3 out of 6. Got the thesis point, got 2 evidence points, and stopped there. Oh wait, that's it. Yes, okay. So now that you have heard the points for all of these, if you feel satisfied, if you feel like you understand what is good and what is not good, then feel free to move on to writing your own rhetorical analysis essay. But if you would like to hear a little bit more detail, I'll talk about each of the essays in turn and explain exactly what went into the points they received or the points they did not receive. So first up, sample A. They did receive the point for the thesis. It was 1 sentence, it was defensible, it established analytical categories, talking about the parallel syntax, repetitions, assertions, and other tactics. Row B, they did get 3 out of 4 points. It had evidence, and the evidence related to the thesis. The reason they didn't get 4 out of 4 points, it only explained how some of the evidence connected to the line of reasoning. So in the second paragraph, for example, they talked about how Madeleine Albright creates a comparison between her audience and the rest of America. It was a good observation, and it connects to the thesis and the message of the text, but they didn't have very much explanation to support it. So we've got some commentary in there. We've got, let's see, they make a few comments. We've got some comparisons in paragraph 4 talking about the women in Burundi and Guatemala and Burma. And it does talk about diction, but the connection isn't quite there. It's really limited commentary. It doesn't really explain how the choices that are being examined contribute to the message. It just says that they do. So the how is just as important as the what. And then finally, sophistication point, they did not receive it. They tried to give some larger context, but it didn't really present a complex understanding of the possible context of the speech or of the rhetorical situation. In that fourth paragraph, they tried to contextualize Madeleine Albright herself, but they didn't really explain how the choices that she made created this authority, this kind of ethos that they were trying to explain, and didn't really talk about relationships among different choices throughout the speech. So just didn't really quite present enough to get that sophistication point there. Okay, on to sample B. Sample B, obviously, a little rougher than sample A. So for sample B, they did get that thesis point. It was minimally defensible. And God, they can't spell the word strategies, which just it hurts me a little bit. But ultimately, they did not get counted off for their spelling. It was really the evidence and commentary that did them in. So they did provide some examples that were relevant to the subject, but there was almost nothing in terms of commentary. They packed it full of this evidence and just really didn't talk about it and explain it enough. So I mean, there was some lovely, quote usage here, and I mean, they chose good sections, and there was a lot of potential for what they could talk about, but just didn't really take it anywhere. It didn't really examine or explain how these choices, related to anything more significant. Didn't really explain how these choices conveyed the message of the speech, didn't really connect it back to message or purpose. It was just, look at all these nice things she did, the end. And then they didn't get the point for sophistication because, I mean, let's be real, they didn't really seem like they tried here. So there was no serious effort at establishing any sort of sophistication. It was just kind of, look at all the stuff she said. I don't know why she said it, but she said it, and it was good, I guess. Okay, sample C. Sample C gets 0 points. Sample C is rubbish. It didn't really even respond to the prompt with a defensible thesis. There was like a sort of kind of attempt to establish a thesis. This part about, her speech gave clear evidence that war is coming to an end, which I guess is kind of an argument, but that wasn't really the point of the text. I mean, this is a text of graduating class. She's not trying to persuade them about war. It was just a little off topic. Didn't seem like they really understood the overall point or purpose of the speech. They did try to provide some evidence, some minimal evidence, but it's really, really vague, really general. They're not connected. The commentary doesn't explain how they might support the interpretation, this like war interpretation that they have. It's really just a bunch of assembled rubbish and gibberish. I mean, in conclusion, the final analysis, we learn that the world is different. Ugh, it's just weak. It's sad. It makes me hurt. Okay, enough about sample C. Moving on to sample D, a little bit towards the upper end of things, at least a lot more words, nice words, good words, happy words. 3 out of 6, which, I mean, isn't miserable. Definitely could have done a little better, but, at least they got their thesis point. They had a clear, defensible thesis. And yeah, they had a message. The message of the speech is to motivate the audience using historical events as well as their aftermath. Okay, so kind of get the main point. Fell short a little bit in the evidence category. didn't really establish a line of reasoning, and they're really big on this in AP. It's not enough to just present examples and say, this is a good example, and here is me explaining how it's a good example. You have to have a reason, use the evidence to support the reason, and use your commentary to explain the reason. So this one kind of did it backwards. They presented the evidence and explained some of it, but they didn't have like a point that the evidence was meant to support. So yeah, just didn't quite get there. Didn't really connect their evidences and their example back to the main point. They seemed to find, the main point, but didn't connect things back so that it was clear, and just really didn't really go anywhere sophistication wise. They didn't really consider how the rhetorical choices that they discussed worked together and worked cohesively, and that would have spoken to a broader context of things. Okay, sample E. Back towards the sad end of the scale. So, sample E receiving very little points here. The only essay that got a point but didn't get a point for the thesis, they state that she reads the commencement letter to the graduating class, but I mean, that's a statement of fact. That's not really interpreting her argument or her purpose. Yeah, it's just completely misinterpreted. They got one little paltry point for evidence, because they did attempt to, put a little bit in there, but it was summarized. They didn't make a connection to an argument, not that they had really even established an argument to make a connection to. It was a lot of vague generalizations and rubbish. And I'm not even going to bother to explain why it didn't get the sophistication point, because there was just nothing to even attempt that particular point. Okay, sample F. Much better things. Sample F was one of our nice essays, one of our perfect score essays. So let's talk about some good things. So, row A, they provided a defensible thesis. It was relative to the rhetorical choices that Albright made to convey her message. In that first paragraph, they talked about referencing the efforts of marginalized women who are fighting to make a difference, utilizing powerful diction and repetition, and illustrating American efforts to improve the world even further. So those were the choices that Albright made. So they've got the C from their cat there. They've got a stellar thesis. Albright inspires a young generation of graduate students on the brink of adulthood with the future in their hands to never settle, always persevere, and fight to elevate the status of women around the world. So definitely understand the purpose, understand the message, and then they start talking about how she does it. So the commentary was engaging. They had a really clear line of reasoning. They talk about how, let's see, where is it? Albright's commencement speech successfully drives home the will to fight for gender equality among her audience by showing them that they can always push harder, that others are already in the fray. I love that word, fray. And that the path is hard and is a challenge that you may partake in. So some really excellent language going on there. They very accurately analyze some of her choices, the repetition of have courage still and persevere. They talk about the structure of the text, like they analyze Albright's structure. That's definitely a good thing. So yeah, it's just really thorough, really consistent evidence and commentary on that evidence. And then sophistication, the reason it did get the sophistication point is that it framed the speech within a historical context and positioned the message of the speech within that context. So they understood the importance of having Madeleine Albright the first female Secretary of State, speaking to a women's college. They really clearly grounded that, and consistently returned to that throughout their essay. So, women power, woohoo! They definitely got the point of that and how important that was in this moment with this audience and this speaker. That was definitely something they did very well. So, anyways, lots of good things in there. They had really good use of textual evidence, so it was really well incorporated. These really short phrases that are so smoothly incorporated into their argument, so it doesn't feel choppy or abrupt in any way. But yeah, lots and lots of good things going on there. And then there's sample G. So sample G, less good, not the worst of the bunch, but only got 3 out of 6 points. They did provide a minimally defensible thesis. They kind of referenced some rhetorical choices, throughout logos and pathos. And I hope you understand now by reading this paragraph why it's not very effective to say, look at all the logos. You don't get any points for using fancy Greek words. And if you can't explain the specifics of what's going on in there, then just using the term, it does nothing for you. If anything, it almost makes it feel worse, trying to, just anyways. So that, not so good. The pathos is a little bit better, but I don't know, this whole bit about the emphasis on rape, it's like one minor part of the speech, and just really try and read a lot more into it than it really needs to be, and they don't really connect it again to that overall message. Rape is not really the point of the whole speech, it's just a part of it. So yeah, anyways, not terribly effective there. Let's see. Anything nice I can say about this? Yeah, just the points just weren't terribly strong. They were just a little weak. They had enough to be able to get a couple points, but not establishing a really strong thesis with a strong line of reasoning really just bit him in the butt there, and didn't go very far. Now, for sophistication, they did not get the point. The final statement, tried to broaden the context and implications of the message, but that broader context was not consistent throughout the response. You can't just have, one little bitty part where you're like, oh, by the way, this is important because, it has to be consistent, something that, they can kind of see throughout your entire essay. So, anyways, not great for sample G. Okay, sample H. Yay, back to good things. Sample H, so delightful. All of the points, all of the good things. I think we can all only aspire to crank out an essay in 40 minutes that looks like sample H. So, for row A, there is a lovely thesis, very defensible position by contrasting hypotheticals and reality, providing examples and personal anecdotes, and strong repetition of the word persevere. Albright successfully conveys her message to these graduates that they must continue the fight for rights in the face of opposition, and that they will succeed. Just beautiful. So, it's a very kind of classic structure. The thesis is the last sentence in the first paragraph. You have these kind of 3 body paragraphs that are, talking about the points that she makes, or she or he makes in the thesis here. But really smart structure, really smart organization. I don't know if I ever would have thought to describe, the examples from Albright's speech this way, contrasting hypotheticals and reality. It's exactly what she does, but a really clever way to describe that. Now, obviously, you don't have to be quite as fancy as sample H to get the points. Some of these words, are AP buzzwords, Anecdotes, that's definitely a word to know, describing like a short little story. So Madeleine Albright definitely uses anecdotes. I would not be shocked if, your rhetorical piece that you must analyze will have a little anecdote in there somewhere. So that's a good word to know. And obviously, repetition, something to always look out for when you're thinking of your DERTS analysis. That sentence structure strategy is a very, very popular one in nonfiction writing. So anyways, they made some excellent choices. Good old sample H. And I'm sure that you can see, in contrast to the not so good essays, obviously there's a lot of quantity here. It is the longest of the essays, but there's such incredible quality too. It successfully integrated evidence throughout the entire essay. The commentary consistently connected back to the thesis. They never let you forget the entire purpose that Albright is trying to convey, constantly hearkening back to, women's empowerment, opposition, will succeed in the face of opposition, just really, really strongly emphasized and re-emphasized that purpose throughout all of their examples. Really, excellent use of incorporating quotes and even paraphrasing. They didn't even they didn't have like a ton of quoted material, but when it was there, it was well incorporated, smoothly incorporated. And when it wasn't, it was specifically described and paraphrased. They even used their own rhetorical strategies, nice little questions, rhetorical questions, and other questions. So yeah, really great things here. From the beginning, sophistication-wise, they presented a complex understanding of the rhetorical situation. The reference to the glass ceiling, that definitely is something that is kind of pervasive in the women's rights struggle, is the idea of the glass ceiling that women have to break through in order to be in positions of power. Let's see, what other wonderful things made this sophisticated? Let's see. Recognizing kind of the larger implications of Albright's call for action. Reminding the women of that struggle and that opposition. So yeah, just all around really good, really excellent. Word choice, sentence structure stuff, just very, very well written overall. So that's sample H. And then finally, sample I. So sample I, one of the middle of the road essays, did all right, got 3 out of 6 points. Probably felt a little bit more sophisticated than, say, sample G, which had a similar point amount, but maybe not quite as good as sample D, which had a similar point amount. But it did provide a defensible thesis. So the thesis was there. It was clear. It did provide relevant examples. The examples were good. The commentary was not good. The commentary oversimplified those examples, in some cases misinterpreted those examples, and just never really connected to a line of reasoning. So they picked good stuff to talk about, but the talking about part just didn't really go anywhere productive. Didn't connect things. So like when they were talking about the illusions in this paragraph, they didn't connect these examples of women around the world to the message, the whole perseverance thing. Just said the illusions also motivate the audience to continue to seek peace, prosperity, and equality around the world. So it's not just like, yay, world peace. There was a very specific message Madeleine Albright is trying to convey, and they didn't quite seem to get that. This metaphor paragraph was a little bit forced and painful. For one, it's not really a very good metaphor. I mean, I guess like they're metaphorically exploding, but I don't know. It just wasn't an incredibly strong metaphor to start with. And yeah, it just doesn't doesn't connect back to the message again, doesn't connect back to the thesis and the purpose. So anyways, they kind of tried to give the sophistication point a shot, talking about how Albright used her choices to motivate the audience, push them towards greatness, and show how the smallest of actions can change the world. So they gave it a shot at the end there, but they, again, didn't really connect it to perseverance. They did not maintain this kind of broader context throughout the response. It was just one kind of last-ditch attempt at getting some sort of broader context in there. So not so great. Okay, hopefully those explanations helped a little bit. And if your scoring was a little bit off tack, then maybe you can see now, yeah, I see why that one didn't get sophistication or whatever the case may be. But if you hear this explanation and you're like, now just wait a sec, I really thought sample G should have gotten 4 points for evidence or, whatever, feel free to email me and I'll try and get back to you before you have to take your rhetorical analysis essay. So yeah, definitely feel free to reach out if you are confused. So now, if you've made it all the way through this video, now would be the time to prepare to take your rhetorical analysis essay. And then after that, very gradually, over the course of the weekend, the nice long weekend, get into Frederick Douglass a bit. Might not be a bad idea to jot down some notes and highlighting and stuff, so that if you are taking part in our in-class discussion on Tuesday, you are prepared and have already kind of assembled some information. So anyways, that's my recommendation for how to best enjoy your weekend. Work through it slowly. Don't try and do it all at once. It's a bit overwhelming all at once. Okay, email me with questions. That's all I got.